Welcome, everyone, to the video podcast series, Lifestyle by Design. My name is Margaret Wiltshire, and I am your host for the night. I'm your host every night that you're here, as a matter of fact. And tonight, I have an amazing, brave, ecstatic woman who is a guest. She's the guest of honor tonight, and she comes all the way from Toronto. Her name is Em Richter, and Em is a best-selling author. She's a career woman, an entrepreneur, philosopher, mystic, poet, dancer, traveler, adventurer, comedian. She is today's modern woman in a success-driven world, being the new personal fulfillment for women. Welcome, Em.
Why, thank you. What a beautiful introduction. I feel like you've set the bar so high. Now I have to live that up. Thank you so much, Margaret. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's an honor. It's an honor. Thank you for spending your time with us tonight. And tonight we'll be talking about, did you see that little thing up there?
No.
It said failed to go live, and now this said live, so we'll see.
Okay.
It's saying live now, but there was a little pop-up that said failed to go live, we'll still keep trying.
Okay, we've got some wardrobe malfunctions
on there for anyone who just joined. Technical difficulties. So I'll just repeat briefly, the introduction again, just in case that part was cut off. Tonight, our guest is Em Richter. Em is a best-selling author. She's a career woman, entrepreneur. She's a philosopher. She's a mystic, a poet, dancer, traveler, adventurer, comedian. She is today's modern woman in a success-driven world. Em is championing the new standards in personal fulfillment for women. It's ecstasy. Welcome, Em. Hi.
I like that introduction even more. That was even more ecstatic than the first introduction. Thank you so much. The way you read it, too, the way you read it, you give it such, it's like a beautiful meal, a three-course meal. You give it such flavor and spice. I love that. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
So tonight we're going to talk about your upcoming book, The Brave Ecstatic Woman.
Yes.
Can you tell me about your book? What's your book about?
Sure. Yeah, my upcoming book is called Brave Ecstatic Woman, 7 Steps to Igniting Your Feminine Essence for an Audaciously Luscious Life. And what I found was in my work, my previous novel, and then in my work working with women, and as my background, I love all the mystical cultures and the ancient myths and the Greek myths. And what I found was that there is a system of women's archetypes, right? There's an old Greek myth that we don't hear about so much because we hear a lot about the ones that are war and pillaging and rape and capture, but we don't hear so much about the feminine myths. And there was a story about the 7 sisters, and the 7 sisters represented these different feminine archetypes. And in my study, what I found was kind of like Joseph Campbell's work with The Hero's Journey, that there is, of all the mystical traditions throughout the world, universally, throughout time, there has always been a very specific archetypal structure for women. And that, in fact, when we look at that, the things that motivate certain women to do certain things versus other women, other things for other women, the challenges for some women versus other women, and there's a distinct sort of blueprint. Our energy is sort of, I say, it's a blueprint. It's not our fingerprint, so we can change it with awareness, but we all have this blueprint that we work off of. And in some mystical cultures, that's called, in Kabbalah, that's called the 7 spheres of awareness. Like I said, the Greek myth of the 7 sisters. We, in our world today, have a lot of awareness about this thing called the chakras. And so I'll be referring to it as the chakras more so, but just so that you understand, it's throughout the world. There's always been, every culture has this system of archetype. And so what I found was that we have these energetic centers that sometimes evolve, but sometimes because of childhood trauma, or the way that we, fears that we had, or challenges in the way that we came to our energy, we sometimes get blocked in a certain chakra, in a certain archetype, in a certain energy. And then we find ourselves continuously running up against the same challenges, against the same fears, against the same lessons over and over again, until we bring that awareness into that. And then there's that element of, when we open up all of our energy centers, then we allow that Kundalini energy, that elan vital, that ecstatic energy to rise in us. And not that we don't have challenges after that, not that we don't confront feelings. There's no such thing as a wrong feeling. So it's not as if we ever don't have anger, we don't have fear, we don't have, it's not as if we're getting rid of those Pandora's box of emotions, but we use those as our superpower rather than our kryptonite. So those things give us power, and we know how to balance that within us. So Brave Ecstatic Woman looks at those archetypes of women and really modernizes them and lets you know not just where that energy is, but how you're living, how it is that your energy, where your shadows are, where you can spend a little time looking, some of the techniques and the strategies that how you can move your body to release some of that, what kind of practices you can do, what focus, what meditation, what yoga, what, crystals you can use, what essential oils, that whole holistic view, and how you can really face those challenges and those adversities and bring yourself into this level of ecstasy. And doesn't that sound juicy? Doesn't that just sound juicy?
That really sounds
ecstasy,
juicy.
right? Like, don't you want to be in ecstasy?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. In that place, there's no pain, there's no worry, it's all great feelings,
Yeah.
It's like the ultimate. So yeah.
Totally. Margaret, that's the thing, is that, do you know, like 1 in 4 women are on antidepressant drugs right now? Did you know that? That's astounding, isn't that? And you got to think of that. That means that 1 in 4 women are courageous enough to go to the doctor and say something's off. And there are a lot of other women who aren't, who feel that but aren't going on antidepressants. And I'm not for or against antidepressants. I'm not trying to, overtake. I believe in holistic. I believe that there's a place for pharmaceuticals and there's a place for medical. I also think, though, that shouldn't be the first line of defense for a lot of the things that we're feeling. There are some secrets that have been hidden in these mystical traditions that have been suppressed, that the feminine aspect of it has been suppressed for so many years. And that's why so many women don't have the tools to blast through this energy. So they're going to the doctor, and the doctor's right away taking out the prescription pad and giving them some antidepressants. Well, we don't need antidepressants. We need some ecstasy, and the natural kind.
Yeah.
Actually, the FDA actually just recently approved some clinical trials of the drug ecstasy for women for other reasons. But why go to ecstasy in a pill form when you can get ecstasy naturally? So we're facing epidemic proportions right now of women who are just disconnected, feeling lackluster, feeling dull, feeling, low libido, low juiciness, low energy, low attraction, not feeling sexy, not feeling fulfilled, not feeling like their voice is heard. We're at epidemic proportions of that, and we need women right now. We need the women's voices. We need them to step into their power. Well,
we'll have to make sure that they get a copy of your book, every single woman.
That's great.
So can you tell me a little bit about the archetypes that you discovered?
Sorry, there was a little bit of a break in the audio there. So I think you just asked, can you tell me a little bit about what I discovered?
The archetypes?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'd love to. So, as I was saying, we have these 7 chakras, the 7 archetypes, and they are what I've systematize them because I really want women to connect with them and see them. So there's the earth mama. So has to do with that root chakra and has to do with that stability and just, survival based. And a lot of us are that, right? We take care of everyone. We're the nurturers. We're the, you can rely on us. We're the ones that are always, the mama to everyone, right? The earth mama, really grounded and stable. Though what happens though, when that energy depletes, when we're giving too much of ourselves in that energy, then we start to act like the martyr. Woe is me. How many times do we hear, oh, well, if mama don't do it, it doesn't get done. Or if you want a job done right, I've got to do it, right? So it becomes this, we're doing things, we're working against our natural ecstasy when we start doing that because we're in that martyr zone, that shadow element, and we're not allowing our juiciness to flow up. The second archetype, which really revolves around the sacral chakra, is the wild woman archetype. And that woman, we all come into that at a certain time in our life. That's that kind of coming into those teenage years, that wild, free, engaged, full of life. And of course, that has its shadows because too much of that, it's sort of like the Marilyn Monroe, right? Too much of that gets stuck and then we become victims. It happens to be that situations keep following us because that wildness hasn't been tempered with any other kind of flow of energy. So it runs on this primal sexual energy, but doesn't get tempered with a lot of other, that wild woman energy is very creative. So an overflow of creative energy, when we harness it correctly or harness it in a healthy way, becomes this ecstatic, joyful creation in the world. Then we move up to the Wonder Woman archetype, and that has to do with the solar plexus chakra. And that is most women in the Western world right now. We got it covered. We can do anything. Babies on one hand, work papers on the other, run from meeting to yoga class, to pick up the kids, to make the dinner, and what's happening with that, and that's really a primary one. When I speak to women consistently, this glares up. Most women are overworked. Most women right now are just, like I used to be, running on empty. I was overworked, overweight, overwhelmed until one day I was over it. It was adrenal fatigue. I didn't have any juice to pull from. The car was running on empty. And that has, that has its shadow elements and there's, ways. In fact, that's a very powerful woman, but there are ways that she's also giving away her power by being too much to too many people. Then we move up to the heart chakra, and that is just expansive love, right? Loves everything, loves everyone. But she has some shadow elements that run with her too, because very often she falls in love a little too easily. And then somehow has to compensate for that by acting as if in other parts of her life, and she's not really being authentic to the love. And very often love goddesses also love to love, but they can't receive love. They don't know how to receive, give and receive. The heart chakra is that center of the body. That's where the energy of giving and receiving, two arms, left and right, it keeps that flow in that heart chakra. Then we go up to the throat chakra, and that is the storyteller archetype. There, we've got women like Maya Angelou. Even it doesn't have to be a woman using her voice or her writing talent. Even someone like Georgia O'Keeffe, who's a very expressive artist, but she's also giving a big message in her art. So even though she's doing visual art, she's still a storyteller because her her expression is so strong. You know, that's the key with the storyteller, is that we very often, especially storytellers, we keep our voice quiet. We don't let our voice be heard. We don't want to make a ruckus. We don't want to attract too much energy. And that's when you start getting thyroid issues and those throat glands and a lot of sore throats, and, you know, that balling up of that energy that wants to just come out of the body and explode and be very explosive energy. We block that up as the storyteller. Then we move up to the third eye chakra, and that's the wise woman archetype. And the wise woman is, you know, quintessentially, I mean, she has vision. She's unique. She can see into the future. She's a visionary, kind of like Oprah Winfrey, right? Very wise woman archetype. But she's got her shadows as well. Sometimes, you know, sometimes she becomes very fearful. She becomes very alone because she sees a little too much, and she can't express what she sees because other people can't see the same thing. And a lot of those women, a lot of wise women archetypes, they blocked off a lot of their energy because that third eye chakra, that energy, that blueprint that they had was coming up in their childhood, and they were told, "Oh, honey, you've got a great imagination. You're not really seeing that. You know, don't believe everything you see." And then she starts to get blocked there from childhood, and so probably she has some blocks in the other elements. And then usually what happens is she comes to about midlife, and suddenly she realizes, I can't deny this anymore. And usually she has a huge change in midlife, which is why it's wise woman usually comes to mean an older woman. But usually it's because that energy was denied for so many years. And then we have up to the crown chakra, and that is the enlightened mystic, just really connected. And at that point, you know, the hardest thing for enlightened mystics, and a lot of times those are the real lonely people. They are disconnected from the earthly pursuits, so they don't feel that they really can associate with people because they just don't have the same things in common with them. So those are some of the real, you know, those are people who have a lot of challenges that they can't even admit to because they can't talk to anybody about it. Because, you know, anyway, so as we come through our whole life, ideally what we want to do is be such an open channel that each one of our energy centers is wide open, so we pull into the different energies that we need for certain aspects of our life. So being blocked in one kind of handicaps us, or doesn't give us an awareness of a certain situation in life, right? So being too much on the spiritual side is wonderful and you know, a very admirable place to be, but it doesn't help in, you know, there's that great quote, after the ecstasy, the laundry. Right? We have lives, you know, so we can sit under the Bodhi tree and meditate and Om and have this transcendent experience, and then guess what? Laundry needs to get done. Mm-hmm. So anywhere where we have those blocks, then there's some part of our life that we're not paying attention to, that we're challenged by. And my pursuit is to really open women up to really accept every part of their energy, every part of their body, every part of their being, every part of their archetype, every part of their power, and really harness that to live an audaciously luscious life.
Wow. That's really interesting because, you know, I could almost identify with, you know, each one of the women, the archetypes.
Right.
So it's pretty interesting. You know, I was sitting here listening. I was like, am I blocked in any of these areas? There might be blockage in a few. You know, but that's Interesting. It's very interesting. And I could identify with each one, you know, maybe at different points in my life. Pretty profound.
Hey,
Go
and
ahead.
when you have, you know, the biggest thing is when you have a challenge that keeps coming up that makes you sit up and take notice, then that's where you've got to shine the light, right? That's why it's called shadow work, because it's in the shadows.
Okay.
You know, a lot of us, like in the light side, in kind of on the bright side of every part of ourselves, we go, I like that. It's in the shadow elements that sometimes we don't look, and we dust that under the rug. And here is where we, you know, the more we pull back the layers, pull back the onion peel, the more we bring more of that into our life, we become higher and bigger and more powerful and a larger vibration. Have you ever met a woman or a person who walks into the room and you can just feel it? I mean, you know that person is just powerful. They've got an aura or a radiance about them that is pulling people in on all the right levels, right? That they can connect with every different kind of energy. That's ultimately where we want, you know, where you want to be, where I want to be, where every woman wants to be. That is the goddess consciousness.
Hey, you're like that.
Oh, that is awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
You are like that. We met in California at the Brendan Bouchard event.
Yeah.
And you definitely had that energy, you know, and as you know, walk through the room, you could see that people, you know, there are people who gravitated towards you, lots of people. And I remember one of the workers, somebody who was like a volunteer for the event, he said to you, you have like the best smile, you know, every time you smile. So, I mean, you definitely, your energy comes across, for me at least, you know.
Thank you. And I take that as a compliment, and I accept that. And so I work with women, and I always tell them, accept a compliment, never do the compliment, but no. However, I'm going to go against my my advice, and I'm going to say, well, thank you, but, and I'll quantify the but. There was a time, fairly recently, like I said, you know, where I was overworked, overweight, overwhelmed, and I did not shine my radiant light at all. I looked the same, you know, it has nothing to do with, I mean, the smile that you commented, or the physical, everything was the same. I haven't, you know, I've been a size 2 and I've been a size 12 and, you know, and everything in between. But in this journey, there was nothing that changed until one day I was just over it. I, you know, was done looking at myself in the mirror and saying, and not liking what I saw. I was done, you know, flagellating, right? Like the hair shirt, kind of like whipping myself about, like, oh, I need to lose weight, and I've got the baby weight still, and you know, the stretch marks, and I was just one day just done. And that's when I started to research, what is it, you know, you hear so much about the great women like Cleopatra, who was known, you know, to not be the most beautiful woman. She had a hook nose, and, you know, it was said in the literature that she looked like her father, which I don't think is a compliment, right? Like, and yet she had, from all accounts, I mean, everyone who would write about her would say she had this radiance and this energy that magnetized. I mean, she seduced or had fallen in love with her 2 emperors and brought down 2 empires. You know, this woman had something. And as I started to research what it is that women like Cleopatra had, what it is that Joan of Arc, who, you know, this peasant girl, suddenly had this power and courage to come up and say, let me lead an army. I mean, like, that's chutzpah. Who does that? And so I started researching these role models for femininity and for feminine energy. And what is it that compelled them? And I started to, piece by piece, see each of these women was working in their superpower, was working in their energy. And as I started to learn that, I started to embody it. Because, you know, I said to you, I'm going to repeat it here. Is it okay to repeat the quality of woman?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay, because it's a little bit raunchy, but it speaks to, it's a metaphor. That the quality of woman in your head dictates the quality of man in your bed. But it's more than just bed. That's just a funny way. It's also the quantity of money in your bank account, the quality of happiness around you, the radiance that you bring in, the laughter that you have, the juiciness of your life. Knowing, having these women, these embodied women in your head. It's like, I call it your council of superheroes. Even oh gosh, what's that classic book? Not how to. God, I can't remember it right now. But a classic self-development book where he wrote, bringing in your role models, and he mentioned things like Ben Franklin and some of his.
Was it Napoleon Hill?
It was. Thank you. It's amazing. I was just talking about it today, and I couldn't remember the name. Napoleon Hill. He said, he brings in his sort of council of elders or council of wise men, and that he brings them in to solve a problem. And once he's brought them in, they start arguing amongst themselves, and he's not even involved anymore. He's just sort of like taking notes for them. And that's, if you know anything about energy, that's exactly what you're calling in as a council. And yet we know that in personal development for men, and yet how many of us have built our own council of superheroes, right? Like, we're calling in from what we know of history, these wise men. Well, let's call in some wise women.
Yeah.
And let them teach us our feminine energy. So as I started doing that, bringing in my council of superheroes, learning as much as I could about these feminine mysteries that have been hidden and suppressed, learning as much as I could about embodying my power. I say embrace, embody, empower. Embrace your body, and that means your whole body, physical, mental, spiritual, auric, etheric, energetic. I mean, all of it, everything. Embrace your body, embody your power, and empower your life, and live the life of your dreams. Embrace, embody, empower. And as I started doing that, embracing and embodying it, I started living it, and then that's what you see in California. And so there's my thank you, but I learned it, and so can you.
Wow, I'm taking notes here.
Oh,
that was beautifully said. I like that. So, your book is about 7 steps to igniting the feminine essence. So I want to know now, like how.
I want to know now. Little musical break.
No, I know that would be so great if I could do like a sound effect or something now. If I was a little bit more techie, I bet I could.
Or if you were 15, because let's just face it. Just press yeah. And you know what? We're not. So we got to do a little musical interlude by singing. Ready? I want to know now.
I want to know now. Okay.
We work with what we got.
That's right. I'm working it here.
You work it, girl. You work it. Looking good.
Thank you. I'll take that compliment.
There you go.
I'm learning. So what can I do to ignite my feminine essence?
Oh, good question. Wow, good question. I'd love to have a swanky answer to give you to, a single word to ignite your feminine essence. Here's a great word. Accept.
Okay.
That just, yeah. I get, and you're actually a great candidate for that. I gave you a compliment. You're like, I'm going to accept. That's a big thing that women, I'd say, really, there's a few words that are constant kind of like mantras for women and the women that I've worked with. A big one is accept. It is, ask and accept. Release, let go. There's let it go, right? Why did that become such a huge song? Like the clarion call for so many young girls. Let it go. Like, just let it go. But I actually have, it's actually a great question. So we've all heard the acronym for fear, right? So my book is Brave, Ecstatic Woman. So I look at the first part of the book, looks at what is brave, what is ecstatic, and what is woman. Because we need to clarify some of those, the way we interpret some of those things. And then the second half of the book goes into the the 7 feminine archetypes. But one of the things I came up with, and so we all know what, if you've spent any time in personal development, we know what fear stands for, right? So what does fear stand for?
False evidence appearing real.
Right. And then there's another one that says, forget everything and run.
Okay.
Have you heard that one? And if you're around audiences that don't really mind a little swear word here and there, it's F everything and run, right? Same concept.
I like that one.
You like that one? Okay, great, right? They're fun. But what they're doing, love it, but what they're doing is they're approaching what is, what fear is, and, false evidence appearing real. So it's sort of like looking at, well, you're fearful of, it's not really there, or forget everything and run. So just drop everything. But they're not actually looking how to transcend fear, because my approach is not actually about being fearless. I actually say, forgo fearless for fierceness. Right? Like there's no such thing as fearless. No one's ever been fearless. Yeah. Right? You're looking at, we've been sold a bill of goods that, was Rosa Parks fearless in what she did? No, she was fed up. She was fierce. And was Malala fearless? No. She had fears, but she was fierce in her conviction. So we have a wrong approach around what bravery is, what courage is, what fear is. We're not supposed to, we look at some of the people that are the most courageous and say, wow, they're so bold, they're so brave, they're so courageous. I could never be like that. Where really, they're making in their business the same as we are. And so it's not, so then Zig Ziglar, in, the great Zig Ziglar, I love Zig Ziglar, and he came in and said, and he reestablished that acronym. So it's no longer forget everything and run, or F everything and run, or false evidence appearing real. He actually said, how do you conquer fear? Feel everything and rise. Right? Completely, that is true. It completely revolutionizes the way we look at fear. You're not supposed to not feel fear. No, you're supposed to feel it. Feel everything. There's no such thing as a wrong feeling, even fear, and rise above it, right? So shine that light under that rug, shine that light in the shadows. Now I have my own version of the acronym for fear, and it really has a lot more to do with women, because women do feel everything and rise already, great Zig Ziglar, but kind of gave it as a general for everyone, but women need to find, ask, and receive. Okay. That's usually where we're blocked. We have fear around finding what it is, not just that we want to do. We all have these dreams of what we're going to do. I'm going to do this job. I'm going to do that job. I'm going to do mothering. But we don't find what it is that we want to be. What energy we want to be. We can do mothering, but are we being a mother? Are we being that? So we could really have to find what it is that is our energy to be, and then ask for it, right? Ask and you shall receive. We have to open up that. That last part is and receive. Accept. You did a great thing when I gave you a compliment. You went, I'll take it. But so many women do the opposite. Like, oh, no. This dress, oh, it's old, it's cheap. I got it on, Bargain Basement and Filene's Basement. And what we're doing, in fact, is like deflecting. We're not accepting that energy to come into us. We're not accepting the compliments. We're not accepting, you know, if a man smiles at us, we're scared that we're leading him on, so we don't accept a smile. We don't accept, we don't receive, we don't allow ourselves to be in a point of receiving because we're so busy giving. Someone gives us something, so we feel that we have to give it back, right? The you know, this kind of give and take, and we're blocking our receiving. That's the biggest thing for women. So find your ecstasy. Sorry, find ecstasy and receive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm like just listening to you now. Like, oh, it's back to me now.
Yeah.
You know, my guests, the past few guests have just offered so much value that you get lost, right? And not lost, like caught up. And you know, it's like almost just watching someone on stage and they're giving their talk, you know, and it's like, oh, okay. Now it's back to me, you know, because it's just so good. You want to hear more, you know. Okay, so how do I ignite? Like, what would I do on a daily basis, right? After let's say I'm having a bad day.
Right.
You know, I know that I ask. No, wait, find
Sorry.
ask,
Find ecstasy and receive. Yes.
and receive.
Yes. Ask, receive. Sorry, I'm.
Okay. So like on a daily basis, let's say, what can I do on a daily basis to keep this fire burning?
So it's a great question. And I think that really comes into identifying which archetype you're in, because each of the archetypes is, obviously there are some things that collectively we can all do. And we've heard a lot about them, you know, self-care, self-love, meditate, fresh air, exercise, water, you know, and all those, like, but really the biggest one is self-love. Self-love is the biggest one. But if you want to get a little bit more specific into the actual tools and techniques, then you would have to identify which archetype you're running on. So actually, if you go to www.braveecstaticwoman.com, it brings you to this quiz, this 8-question quiz. Very easy quiz. And then you immediately get your archetype. And then with knowing what your archetype is, then you download an ebook, you know, with it. And then knowing what your archetype is, then you can know, I give specific exercises. You know, in my background as a belly dancer, feminine dancer, there were a lot of secrets that the women would dance, you know, grandmothers would dance with their granddaughters and aunts with nieces and mothers with daughters, and they would tell these stories about femininity through that dance. And whether they knew it or not, I mean, I think that our foremothers knew a lot more than we know today in science, but you know, now science is catching up and figuring out that there are certain movements that open up certain meridian glands or endocrinal glands. You know, if you just do sort of a little bit of a squat and then pump up, quickest way to get your testosterone up. Even when we were at the Brendan Burchard event, he commented on that as well. You know, you want to supercharge before you go out on stage, do this little movement. And it looks, you know, you might have people wondering what you're humping, but that's what he does to get his testosterone up to come out on stage, because you really need a lot of testosterone to be in front of a crowd like that. So, and there are other movements that open up different endocrinal glands and different hormonal elements or levels. Okay. And there are also techniques, there are focuses and meditations and movements and essential oils and crystals and, you know, there's a whole gamut, a whole different array of choices of things for working within your individual energy. So it's each archetype has its own blueprint. So it has its own set of criteria for working with.
Okay.
Yeah.
So You talked about your inspiration for the book being, something that you were going through, something you were experiencing, and you just got fed up. So tell me about what was happening after you received this information that you were searching for, and then you decided, I want to share this with other women.
Yeah, thanks. This. So I'll tell you what was going on, and it's funny because it's hard. I've put it in my book, and it's a very big challenge for me because I'm a very shy person, introverted person naturally. So, to talk about my personal life becomes a very challenge for me. But and I say that only because I don't want it to kind of sound as if like it's sort of easy for me to just talk, it was something that during the time that I was going through it, probably even my good girlfriends didn't even know the extent of what I was feeling. But I'm a mom, I have 3 kids, and, the loves of my life, and I love being a mom, and I always wanted to be a mom. And I'm also a flight attendant, or was a flight attendant for my whole corporate career, and did some time in the training, corporate training, and but I loved the traveling part, so I was balancing the two. And then what happened was during the market crash, my husband lost his job, as many people did, and so suddenly, this beautiful balance that I created of having like a stay-at-home mom and then be able to work almost like a part-time thing, kind of fell. My world kind of crumbled, and suddenly I had to take on a lot more work because I became the sole income earner, the breadwinner for the home. And that just, I was working a lot, kind of burning the candle at both ends. It really depleted me. It was having a lot of effect on my vitality. My weight skyrocketed. I was stressed. I was kind of working hard and then not even enjoying the time that I was with my kids because I was just so grumpy and tired. And I was having a lot of that going on. And actually, it came to me, that moment of looking in the mirror and being over it actually came to me. I was actually on layover in Israel, and I went to Jerusalem. And while I was there in Jerusalem, actually writing, I started scribbling in a notebook, my first book. And this seed started germinating in me, and as I would go to Jerusalem and I would write, and then one day I had this wave of the best I can describe it is sort of like a wave of energy wash over me. It was like I went into this sort of vortex of energy, and I felt sort of tingling, and I was here and not really here, and I started hearing what can best be described as a voice or voices, though I can't really say that it was, a tangible voice that I really heard. I just kept hearing this message: bring the women, bring the women, bring the women, gather the women, bring the women. And I sort of kept asking, like, well, what, how, what? And there was no other, so like no other explanation was given, no other explanation was needed, just bring the women. And it was this, I can say that moment, usually we talk about ecstasy as like this high euphoric state. And I could say that moment was ecstatic, though it wasn't euphoric. I mean, it kind of took me out of myself for that time, that, and it was really ecstasy. And it wasn't pleasant or pleasurable, but neither was it unpleasant or unpleasurable. It was just ecstatic. It was like the ecstasy of Saint Teresa. It was this transcendent moment. And that's when I went back to my hotel and looked at myself in the mirror and went, I can recognize that I feel overworked, overwhelmed, overweight, and I'm over it. And I made the decision right then that no matter what else is going on in my life, I'm going to live in that moment of ecstasy. I'm going to tap into that. And that's when I started doing that. So it started to be like, okay, I've been tasked with gathering the women, bring the women. So I've got to bring the women, our foremothers, bring those women, have them meet the modern woman, have them start to band together as a tribe of women, have them learn from each other and be with each other. And that started me on this path.
Okay.
Yeah. And then to bring it back down to earth, right? After I
the
came
laundry.
back, yeah, now bring it exactly after the ecstasy, the laundry. Yeah. So I came back and I started working on this small Facebook page that in the first month had 2,000 subscribers, and then
wow,
2 months later had 4,000, and now it's sitting at 23,000, or quite a few tens of thousands of people who are and I just put these empowering messages, messages of feminine spirituality, have us take a different look or a different view at our physical bodies or our energetic bodies, or what it means to be a woman and be proud of ourselves and powerful within ourselves as women. So that's Facebook, Brave Ecstatic Woman. And now I'm going to be starting a podcast, like I was telling you. And what I'd like to do is take these women from history and reveal some of their stories and their motivations and their inner struggles and their shadows, so that we can start looking at ourselves through that lens and seeing where we resonate with that energy and how we can really get inspired by those women.
Okay. Do you have a favorite archetype?
I will say that when I started this pursuit, I was definitely a storyteller archetype, 100%. My first novel is called The Secret of the Storyteller, and that's not a coincidence. That resonated with me, and I always knew I was meant to be a storyteller. Now, as I have started this and I'm working with women, and the more that I work with women, the more that I'm fine-tuning the vision that I see. So when I work with a woman, when I take them through a deeper archetypal assessment, I'm asking them certain very specific questions, and it's painting a picture for me that I can visually actually see their aura and their blockages and their, so that really has to do with that third eye. So I can say that I've shifted into wise woman. I can definitely see things now that I couldn't see before.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would your process be like for working with someone?
Well, so I actually, as I mentioned, the braveecstaticwoman.com takes you into an 8-question questionnaire, which of course I made it 8 questions because no one's going to sit there and take more time and be more developed. But so that already, a woman can already identify themselves by their archetype on just a few simple questions. Okay. But then when I actually work with them, I take that into a much larger, very quick 49-question quiz that I lead them through, and then I can really see exactly where their blockages are, exactly where their shadow elements are. And probably, I worked with one woman who, every time I work with a woman, it's amazing to see where it is that they, as soon as you pinpoint what it is that got blocked, it's almost like it blasts through that, right? Because that as soon as you have that awareness and you can really pinpoint that energy into where that balance needs to be, then she comes into I've had women who I've done an assessment with who have realized that they've had this longing to do segment 2 or the next career or the next stage or the next love or be brave in expressing their love to someone or expressing what they want or their desires to their husband, or that as soon as we've worked together and they've identified how it is that physical ailment, that malfunction keeps coming up for them, well, guess what? It's because you're blocking the energy flow there. So as soon as we work together, that so many women who the next week 2 weeks later, they messaged me back saying, like, I can't believe how much has changed since I did that session with you, since we worked together last, because they're seeing such huge shifts because of the awareness of one thing, and realizing that if they continue doing that one thing, they're going to keep having the same malfunction, the same fear, the same challenges, the same physical feedback. And when they shift into where they really want to go, then that all gets blasted away. It could be financial stability. It could be, the loveliest thing I've ever had was I had one woman who had been trying to get pregnant for years. She was on infertility treatments, and she was on all kinds of IVF and all the treatments for that for years. And she did one 8-week session with me. And then she came back at the end of the 8 weeks and she said, I can't even believe this. But she was pregnant. And all of the times that it hadn't taken, but she credits, now a skeptic could say, well, that could have happened anyway. But she credits doing the work, doing the movements, doing the attention, the focus on it. So that was sort of the best feeling. That yes, that's,
Wow.
that's, yeah.
What have you learned about women working in this process?
I will say, that women, we are caught up in a culture of lack. We're caught up to believe that there isn't an abundance available to us. And what happens then is, because we as women are in a culture of lack, we become very competitive with each other, because we feel that there's only one prize, or one, we want that, and that there's not an abundant universe of possibilities out there for us to get. So I think that's the hardest part, is that, is getting rid of that feedback loop, that indoctrination of kind of like the competitive aspect, which is a very male aspect. But it's because we're in a male-dominated culture, because that kind of survival of the fittest has been indoctrinated into us, and it's so against the grain of who we are. And that's the hardest part. That's the hardest part, is getting women to kind of come back to that goddess consciousness of abundance, which is who we truly are. And that abundance makes us so radiant, and there's no need to compete, no need to feel in lack, no need to be worried, no need to, how the cat claws don't need to come out, because they really don't need to. If we start to understand on a quantum level what is available to us, the possibilities that are available to us, we would be awestruck at the beauty and abundant mystery of the universe.
Like knocking stuff down over here. I put my notepad there and you said something and I just wanted to make a note. So
I would love to know what all the notes you're taking. I would love to.
Some of the stuff you're saying is just so profound, and also it's like I'm sitting and I'm listening to you, and it's really interesting because it's like I can see my interviews lined up. Like it's weird, but I'm having this like surreal experience, because it's like from each person I've interviewed before, there's like this thread and this connection, and my last, and sometimes it's interesting because the topics aren't really related. And
you wouldn't think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My last interview, I interviewed my nutritionist, who, which was interesting. It was a really great interview. He he just took this turn somewhere in the interview, and it was a question that I asked, and he took a turn. And I don't do like questions for my interviews. It's conversation, and it's flowing, and there's like a
fun.
Yeah, and it's a theme. So he introduced this idea, which pretty much made whatever questions I wanted to ask like completely irrelevant, right? And he talked about having body intelligence and biological autonomy in terms of like food and certain things. And somehow like his ideas are like connecting with this. Like somehow I feel like you know, there are these veils that, you know, like there's an angel standing there. It's like, okay, you get to see this now. I'll now remove that. And you know, what you were saying, like somehow it's like these pieces are coming together, and it was like really bizarre. And I'm like, wait a minute, you know, I've got to document this because I don't want to lose it, you know, because it's like shifting together. Everything's coming together, and it's really very, very interesting, you know. So I probably did lose a little bit of my train of thought there, but that's okay. It'll come back to me, right? Whatever it is I know will come back, because I'm going to think about it and sit there and be like, what was that? Because that was like, you know, it was pretty deep. So you are a mystic.
Yeah.
And can you tell our audience exactly what that means?
Sure. Yeah, and it's sort of one of those things like, what is a mystic? Well, so primarily, like I've always been interested, you know, I think even when I was a little girl, I was one of those girls who saw things and eventually learned not to talk about those things because people kind of found that pretty weird. I was kind of a weird kid, but luckily I had a mom who wanted to know about her daughter and wanted to understand these things. And maybe she had had some of those things in her childhood and that she suppressed them, and maybe her mother before her, and you know, but she, in order to understand me, went into the world of mysticism. So she studied Kabbalah, and she studied astrology, and she studied tarot, and she studied the gematria, which is, you know, the numeric basis of letters, you know, and a lot of those kind of mystical traditions. And I mean, I remember, like, we were talking about law of attraction way before The Secret came out. You know, it was this sort of like, you know, I would say, I'm going here, I'm going to the store, and she'd say, well, don't forget to call out what you need before you get there, so that it, you know, so that you attract it, or so that you manifest it, things like that. And actually, my mom got sick when I was very young, and she went. She had a brain tumor, so she had the brain tumor removed, and in the removal of it, the blood flooded to that area, and she had suffered essentially the effects of a stroke and went into a coma. And then she was unconscious for 9 months, and it's sort of telling because, you know, 9 months for me to come into consciousness, or for me to come into kind of physicality and within her, 9 months. And I would sit beside her bedside during that time, and I was a very young woman then, and she would teach me these things in that place of unconsciousness, about where consciousness resides, how we can communicate beyond our physicality, beyond the voice. And she taught me a lot of that. And at the same time, you know, I was young, and I was in college, university at the time. And I had started the path of psychology, you know, looking to be kind of study psychology, like a lot of people who don't really know what they want to do, study. And I found that the psychology classes that I was taking were looking a lot of the times at the pathology, right? At the what's wrong, like let's identify what's wrong. And then being with my mom in the hospital and having me learn about those things. So I started studying, instead of psychology, I decided to switch my major to philosophy, and really more specific philosophy of religion. So it's not theology. I didn't learn, you know, scripture. I didn't learn, you know, it wasn't Bible study. It wasn't from that perspective. It was the why. Why did people, you know, why did these religions create this? And I started untangling that going down that rabbit hole and untangling that thread that was, well, so if this was the suppressed archives of this religion, and this was the suppressed archives of this religion, and yet the two are very similar, and then there's another suppressed archives of this religion, and these poets that were banned, and the writing of this mystic that was banned for so many years, and yet they're all kind of speaking the same thing. They're all saying the exact same thing, and they're keep being suppressed and keep being banned. And so I've made it my pursuit to study every single mystical tradition that I can. So we're talking Kabbalah, Taoism, Sufism, Tantra, all of those, Rosicrucianism, Christian mysticism, all of those, and they all kind of circle back into each other. They all are a feedback loop, and they all really say the same thing. And essentially, it's a beautiful time that we're living in, because essentially a mystic today is really a quantum physicist. I mean, I think it was Einstein that said, like, if you say that you understand it, if you believe that you understand quantum physics, then you haven't even started studying quantum physics. Because the rabbit hole goes so deep. So we're now seeing science is proving that that the quantum reality works in waves and particles. That we are in fact the masters of our own reality. That reality is an illusion, albeit a persistent one. And so we're starting, and these are the texts and the sacred writings and teachings that have been suppressed. And so really in general, mystics sound like this woo-woo thing, and it's really not. I mean, it's just looking at everything that's coming out now and saying, like, yeah, they were talking about that a few thousand years ago, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So a mystic is really a quantum physicist. Did I say that right?
I'm not going to claim to be a quantum physicist in any way, but I don't have a science. I'm just saying that quantum physics is now coming up. It's the same language now. It's the same. It's giving the same information in a very different, wrapped in a different box, but it's much the same.
Okay. What have you learned about yourself in this process?
Good question. I think I'm always learning about myself. I think we are always evolving and learning about ourselves. I think that that I'm constantly awakening into myself, and awakening deeper into myself, and realizing myself, and realizing another level of myself, and another reality of myself. And then sometimes I get dumb, right? Like I just, right? And I pass through a time and I go, I know better than that. I've done this work before. But it's like the staircase never really leads you anywhere, though it just, the spiral staircase just keeps getting wider.
Okay.
Right? And so you're just expanding, you're constantly expanding. But I have, learned that I have 100% track record for getting through things. I have 100% never failed myself. So I've gotten a lot of confidence in, I have, 100% faith that that my story wasn't written to fail. Like that whatever I'm doing, my story was written to succeed.
Amen. Amen. That's powerful. That's really powerful. And as I'm listening to you,
yeah,
I'm just starting to think more, like women, human beings, and the time that we live in, things kind of like, there are things that are set in place.
Right.
I don't know if I would say intentionally or maybe not. Maybe people, just come into it from an unconscious place. But it's like we really have to travel within. And, a man has a special journey to manhood. And he's got a male body and, masculine energy. And the feminine has a female body and feminine
Definitely.
energy and
Yes.
feminine hormones,
Yeah.
and I'm listening to you and it's really expanding my consciousness more. And it's like, you really have to go there and
Right.
make that journey because
Yeah.
it's important, people, and sometimes we don't, something has to happen for us to kind of like, go there and
Sometimes,
research. Yeah. Sometimes it takes us being frustrated.
Crisis, right?
Yes.
Often people have a crisis and then a crisis of consciousness. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's really important to do it. Like I'm just, I'm listening and I'm like, wow, yeah, it really is. Because we'd be able to get more in tuned and more in alignment,
Right.
And unblocked, more clarity, not just on a physical level, but a spiritual and emotional level.
Right. Right.
So wow.
Right. Yes. It's I don't know if we're going over time here, but
yeah.
just want to give you a little heads up.
Yeah. So before we go,
okay, yeah.
So two things, right? It's a tradition here that our guests offer 3 action steps for viewers to start living their dreams.
Wonderful.
Right? But before you answer that, do you have like a message you would love to depart upon women? What would you say to women?
So I would say dance. Just dance with life. Don't ask why you need to dance. Just dance. Dance because you're alive. You are alive, and this is the dance. This is a game that you came here to play. And so play it full out. Dance. Right? Like that beautiful song, I hope you dance, right? Do everything that you want for your daughter, for that little girl, for little girls around, give to yourself. Dance, laugh, enjoy this time because this is the time that you came into this physical body in order to dance. Because in the other realms, as spirit, you don't have the feet, you don't have the hips, you don't have the hands, you don't have the breasts, you don't have the, feel everything about your body because that's what you're here to do. That's what you came here to do is dance with everything. Write your songs, sing write your poetry, your books, sing your songs, create your art, play with your hair, make your hair designs, look good, just dance, have fun with it. And then the 3 takeaways, was that the?
Yeah, 3 action steps that they can implement into their lives immediately, like right after they finish viewing this podcast.
Okay. Action steps that they can take. So get more sleep, 100%. All of the, there were a few self-development books that came out that said less sleep. Actually, Arianna Huffington, I just saw, had a new book that's called The Sleep Revolution. So all of that BS that they write about less sleep to become more productive is, BS. And, I don't want to say it's even good for men, but it's definitely not good for women. We are so multifunctional and we multitask so much that we deplete our energy much more than men, where men are much more focused. So we definitely need more sleep, 100%. They say 8 hours, give us 9 hours. Sophia Loren is one of my Shiro's counsel, and she swore by 9 hours of sleep, and she was just one sexy woman right up until her old age. So that's number 1. Was that number 1? Yeah, number 2. So 100%, we talked about doing the squat and kind of hump for increasing testosterone. That was just one thing. Definitely testosterone is not something that we lack, all in all. One of the things that we do lack hormonally is called oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. It's that hormone that we make when we start, when we're in labor and we start dilating. It's the hormone that we produce in multitudes when we're lactating and feeding our baby. It's what lets down our milk, right? It's that love for the baby. And other than the time that we're dilating for labor and lactating and feeding our baby, we do not get enough oxytocin in our lives. That bonding hormone. Men, there were studies done in UCLA that men have the flight or fight response. Women have an urge to merge. We need to feel loved and bonded with each other. We need to nurture. We need to up our oxytocin. So all women are deprived in oxytocin. Oxytocin is created by being around people that we love. It's created by giving very direct eye contact. I'm giving you very direct eye contact right now as I'm saying that. It's also created by giving very heart-to-heart hugs. And so action step to do is to go and start hugging, not just people that you love. Hug with intent. Best way to hug is left arm over left arm so that the two hearts connect. It increases your oxytocin. Like you start having jumps in oxytocin, you start to feel good. Those feel good neurotransmitters start to jump up, which starts to create serotonin levels, right, and balances, and other really kind of upping the libido and other kind of feel good chemical hormones. So oxytocin, up your oxytocin, give lots of good hugs, at least 10-second hugs. Hug like you mean it. So that was tip number 2. Tip number 3 is go to braveecstaticwoman.com and do that quick quiz and find your archetype and download the ebook. And in the ebook, it has your specific, some of the tools that you can use for your specific archetype. And then you'll also get on my email list. And on my email list, I give weekly tips or weekly focus on what is brave, what is ecstatic, what is woman, and on all of these archetypes. So you really kind of delve into, before you're in crisis mode, delve into who you are and where know thyself. Tenet noche, know thyself.
Em, I want to thank you for spending your time here with me tonight. I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge, sharing your experience, sharing your wisdom and your insight. And I want to honor you for stepping into your light, living your message, and serving others, helping them. It's almost like you're like this guide, back to who we are, back to our essence. And I want to thank you for not being afraid to go there and for being an inspiration. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was such an honor to be here. Thank you. And I appreciate all those kind words that you just said. Thank you. And thank you to your audience. I give kisses to you. I give kisses to the audience. Lots of love and a huge oxytocin hug.
Yeah. I'm sending them kisses and hugs and 10-second heart-to-heart, oxytocin hugs.
Yeah,
too.
Perfect.
So thank you, everyone, for stopping by, listening in. If you thought that this interview was amazing and you received a lot of value and someone who would benefit from it, please feel free to share, like, comment, and let us know what you think. My name is Margaret Wiltshire. I am your host, and this is the Lifestyle by Design podcast, and we are signing out tonight. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And I'll be back. See you next week. Okay. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Wow, that was interesting.
That was fun. It still says